The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft, a man that may have lived a brief and shorn life, lived a life that continues to have footings in our society well over 70 years past his death, as his humor, darkness, and mystery are immortal. Born on August 20th, 1890, in Providence, Rhode Island, Lovecraft early on in his life had to go through hardship as his dad died when he was only 8 years old. This resulted in him being brought up by his mom and especially his grandmother. Reading by the age of 5, Lovecraft showed an especially strong sense of learning early in his life, but was frequently sick from what were described as psychological orders, so the school attendance was sporadic. Only when he reached high school did his learning become consistent and often. The last of Lovecraft's formal education occurred in secondary school or high school at the Hope High School in Providence, Rhode Island, where he met many friends and people who he'd collaborate with over the rest of his life. Lovecraft spent much of his adult life and all the way to the remainder of his life living in Providence, Rhode Island, and the house featured here in the Orange Building. This is where Lovecraft spent most of his life, and many of his stories were penned. Widely regarded as a very ugly individual, Lovecraft did not have much of a love life. He did not have any children, and the only known woman for him to ever have an affair with was the woman featured on his left, Sylvia Green, who passed on about 10 years before his own death in 1923. The key to much of Lovecraft's success in writing came with his collaborations with other authors. Some of his best friends included Hugh Cave, a prolific author of stories for pulp magazines, as well as Harry Brobst, a late associate of his, as well as several others, including young children that he would write with to review his stories that were very popular at the time. Unfortunately, Lovecraft's success in writing did not correlate to good health, as he died at the age of 46 in 1937 from what was described as poor nutrition from the bad diet he had over the course of his life. Of course, Lovecraft is best known for his horror and mystery writing, and this can be attributed very early on in his life, as he wrote The Beast in the Cave only at the age of 14. This story told of a man who became lost in a cave as his torch went out, and when in complete darkness, killed a figure that he did not know was a human being. When viewing it later, discovered to his dismay that was a deformed person who had also become lost in the cave. This story began his career, and over the next 30 years he produced dozens upon dozens of other classics. The first story that Lovecraft penned as an adult writer was The Tomb, a horror story that featured the tales of Jervis Dudley, a self-confessed daydreamer. This novel, while showcasing horror and mystery, also showed the frustrations that Lovecraft had to endure while getting his stories published, as he first wrote this story in 1917, but was only able to get it published first in March 1922. Lovecraft's use of mystery and horror continued all the way to the end of his life, as in 1935, only 2 years before his death, he published a novella, The Shadow Out of Time, a story that has been called by critics such as Lynn Carter as the single greatest achievement in fiction. This story told of a very gothic theme, and one that was true to Lovecraft's nature and has stood the test of time as being regarded as one of the greatest stories ever written and the inspiration for many works that we see today. A large aspect of Lovecraft's writing also came from his imagination and ability to create characters that no one could ever imagine before. Examples include Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, and Azahoth. All of these characters did not resemble anything any person could ever imagine. And the picture here, the beast Cthulhu, can be seen, a god featured in one of his 1928 novels. This character has been punned many times in shows like South Park and various other shows, and shows just how much of an impact Lovecraft has had. Another one of the characters Lovecraft came up with was Dunwich, a horror being that he described as a sick and terrible monster, and just another example of the creativity that this man became known for and allowed him to become a great author. Lovecraft himself was a man who was inspired immensely by art, astronomy, as well as movies and various other authors, all which can easily help to point why a lot of his imagination, horror, and mystery had such originality, as he had the time and the ability to come up with original stories and complete concepts that push the limits of the human mind. And of course, the obvious goal of Lovecraft is to make sure that his stories and his writings transcend time, as his inspiration and all of his great work can be fully appreciated by our youth and future people ahead from now. Thank you.